Don't actually send for it.
I don't know what that guy's talking about. I've never spent a day in prison that I liked. A little over a year ago, I was serving a life sentence with many of the men in the room today. And any one of them who knows me knows how much I love my daughter. And so the first thing I want to do is take a little time to apologize to her. Tori, I love you, and I'm sorry for bringing harm to your life and not being there when I should have been there. I also want to apologize to the victims of my crime. And in the spirit of truth, there's a lot of people to whom I owe an apology. But for the sake of time, I'll just say that I vow to live my life in a way that deters others from following in that footstep. In 1994, I participated in the takeover robbery of a computer parts company. I was eventually caught and sentenced to life in prison. There are two types of life sentences. One is life without the possibility of parole, and the other one is life with. I was sentenced to 17 years to life. I eventually did 18 years, and after appearing before the Board of Prison Terms 5 times, I was released. What I've chosen to talk about is what it's like to be released back into a society that is not ready to receive me. Parole in California looks a little something like this. I was up all night because I couldn't sleep. I waited till 5 o'clock in the morning. The guard came by, escorted me from North Block, where I waited a couple hours, and then a white van came, picked me up, drove me to the front gate, gave me $200 in cash, told me congratulations, and I was ordered to report to my parole agent's office within 24 hours. And truth be told, if it wasn't for my ex-wife, I would have been totally lost. I was paroled into an area I've never lived in, never been in before, and with no instructions on how to get there. Later that night, I pulled up to the transitional house, checked in. One of the first things I did was I called my daughter on the phone, and I told her that I was home, and she thought it was somebody playing a joke and almost hung the phone up. We talked, and for the first time in a long time, I could hear happiness in her voice. I got my bedding, went up to go to sleep. It was a dorm living environment where 50 people are housed in this big house. I was woken up about 2 o'clock in the morning with somebody screaming, "I don't give a damn if you got a gun or not. Somebody stole my phone." And I thought to myself, where the hell did they put me at? The next day, as I walked out the front door that morning, I quickly noticed that there was a dope house right next door to the transitional place. There were drug deals going down in broad daylight. And on the corner, there were prostitutes jumping in and out of cars. There were piles of trash on the corner as though it were a dump site. And all I could think about was that I had been placed in a dump with throwaways. One thing that went through my mind was about me trying to protect myself. And the way that I had protected myself in the past was for me to pick up a pistol and fight anything and everything that came my way that I thought was a threat. But that was out of the question. I just signed the trigger lock law. My intent is to stay free, which I will stay free irregardless of what happens. Right. And so because of the tools that I had, I knew that I had to protect what was essential, to protect my heart from the trauma that I had been accustomed to experiencing. The trauma of feeling like I was worthless, like nobody cared about me, like nobody valued me. Within the first 60 days of being in that house, I watched it no less than 30 men succumb to the pressures of that environment. They either ran away from the transitional house, were either arrested, some of them were out on dope, roaming up and down the street, lost. On one hand, I was just happy to be free. And when things got rough, I thought about my daughter, I thought about my mother, my biggest supporter. Without her support over the past 18 years, I would have been totally lost. And I thought about all the people that were dependent on my success. And on the other hand, I had a plan that I had waited 20 years to get to. And I was putting that plan in action. And then I ran out of hands. I knew that I needed to build me a support group. I knew that I couldn't do it alone. And in fact, I was tired of being alone. So I started to reach out to the only community I knew. And most of that community came from volunteers in this audience today. But there's this impression as though there's one kind of man getting out of prison. And most of society have these expectations on us that we're getting out of prison and we're this hardened criminal and we need to be in a program that teaches you how to fill out a job resume. I was beyond filling out a job resume. I had taught plenty of people how to fill out resumes. I had founded programs. I had production skills. But people seemed to think that they knew better for me than what I knew for myself. And that is a difficult thing to deal with when you're forced to sit in an elementary program and you're working at college level. In addition to communities or people not fully understanding what it was that I needed after prison, there was also the thought that if organizations that had previously worked inside of the prison were to embrace a returning citizen, that it would jeopardize the standing of their programs currently operating inside of the institution. I had to put together a support team of different people and different organizations that were willing to work with me. Thanks to those people who went out on the limb to embrace me, I'm able to do the work that I'm doing out in the community today. In closing, I want to say that most of society is missing the benefit that the men coming home and many of the men in this room have to offer society. Most people seem to want to hire people who have undergone theoretical models as opposed to lived practical experience. And I challenge any professor in the United States of America or beyond that until you spent 25 years inside of a prison system, you don't know more than what we know in this room about the prison system. my request is that we really take a look at the models that are being created, the models that says it's okay for me to show up to a speaking engagement, or it's okay for me to be a student, but somehow it's not okay for the student to become a teacher. There are men that I have learned from, there are men that I continue to learn from, and since being home, there are about at least 50 men that I know who have paroled from San Quentin that are out in the community, and they're doing great work, right? They're trailblazing. They're working with youth. They're building organizations, and that's what we need when we come home. We need to learn how to take the entrepreneur skills that men have talked about here today and transfer that into a corporate environment and be our own bosses. I don't understand why, over the 18-year period of my incarceration, over $900,000 was paid to keep me in prison, but when I paroled, I was given $200 and told good luck. Thank you.
Go there, please. 10-4.